Yo, what's going on, internets? Today I really want to take you on this journey of how I did my recent sort of art installation on this sort of building that's slated to be torn down. It's because I saw it and I was like, I have to do an art installation on it. And I see it all the time. But first, make sure you like and subscribe my channel by hitting the subscribe button, hitting that bell notification, and then that like button. And then make sure you comment below if you have any questions, because I want to make sure, I answer all the questions that you may have. So this project actually started when, I'm driving around town, and this building that's only basically like a block away from my studio space, I cross all the time, but it usually blends in because it has, it's tagged all over, it's unkept, not taken care of because it's slated to be torn down. So there's a lot of sort of gentrification happening in the neighborhood. So a lot of sort of buildings or in lots and sort of spaces are being bought up, but the development is not going to happen for maybe a year or a couple of months or maybe even 2 years. It gets postponed. So these buildings sit empty and nothing will happen to it because, it's going to get torn down. So I saw this building on the corner that I always pass up, and I said, I want to paint that building. So the first thing I did was actually take a few pictures of it and sort of do a mock-up. I did a couple of different mock-ups, but figured out one that sort of really talked about what I wanted this building to be, or what I wanted this art installation to be. And the installation, I wanted it to be something that sort of talked about the idea of how color and sort of like this blast of color can sort of give new life to something that's old and sort of sinks into the past, or it sort of is always looked over because the building sort of blends into the sort of surrounding, its environment, because it's sort of unkept. But if I have this sort of blast of color on the building, now it pops out. Now you're sort of interested in learning more about that building, even though it's still caged up, it's still fenced off, but you just see it differently. And then you're starting to figure out, okay, what was this building in the past? And that's what I wanted to sort of really get at. So I went over to the lot, took a couple of pictures, and then I had to do research in figuring out who owned the lot. So doing my Google research, I stumbled on a couple of articles about what that lot is going to be turned into. And it's going to be turned into apartments and condos, something in the future. But, it was like, okay, I see it's going to be turned into condos and everything. So it's going to be torn down. So they won't mind me sort of painting, doing whatever to that space. So that was a good thing. Then I had to figure out who was developing the lot. Sometimes it's easier when the developer is local versus out of state, or an entirely large sort of conglomerate in another country. So this one was great because it was local and it seemed like a small developer. So, seemed like they would be the ones to actually open up an email. So I sent an email telling them about myself, that my studio was close, that I have a ton of mural projects around town. I sent a mock-up of what I wanted to do to the building and told them, hey, I know this lot is going to be sort of redeveloped and the building will be torn down, and I want to add artwork to it, and I know that it's temporary. And they got back to me about 2 days later over the weekend, and it was a great response, and the developer loved the idea and sort of knew about my work around town. That's why I love working with local developers, because they come across my work around town, so it's easier for them to sort of visualize, my work that I want to do on their space. And they said, hey, you can do whatever you want on it, and we love the mock-up and everything, so go ahead. And that's when I started getting into the idea, okay, now I got to figure out funding and figure out, how do I sort of execute the project and when I want to do it. So that's when, basically I brought in nonprofit organization Redline for some labor, and their Reach program, who has a ton of people that really want to get more into the arts. So having some of them help me out, and then Red Bull as well. So Red Bull helped pay for the paints, and basically you know, it was a fun project, sort of redoing this building. It was an easy sort of install. Basically, I had to prime it white and then do a color blast. But when we were in the midst of doing the project, it was really, really cool, and sort of changing that space into something that now when you drive by, it's like you're automatically noticing it, especially if you're from the area and that building blends in. Now there's like this orange and yellow color blast that you see on this building. Now, like I said, you're asking questions about what is this building about? What was it? You know, who did it? You know, why is it changing? Why is it not sort of torn apart? Or why is it sort of not tagged up? Or why is it, you know, why is it different? Me seeing a building that I pass by all the time and figuring out who owns it, who I get permission from, figuring out how do I get them to visualize the project I want to do on the building and have them say yes, and then figure out funding for the project as well. So this all came about in probably a matter of a week. This project too is also ongoing because I know that street art is always temporary. I want to see how this space evolves when people add their own artwork to it, because you know I'll get a ton of tags, wheat paste, and sort of just other artists adding on to the design or the background blend that I did, and it's really, really interesting just to see how that evolves over time on a sort of somewhat blank canvas. Really cool to see, you know, how this sort of building that was unkept is now sort of a canvas for the community. And that is what I really wanted to sort of talk to you guys about today, just in terms of the art project that I did, and sort of give you a little bit of insight on how that sort of came about. And I'm really, really glad of the outcome and results, and hopefully you can do your own project in your own city. All you have to do is self-initiate and figure out, okay, who owns that property, and then how do I get it funded, and how do I get all the equipment and tools and paints that I need to do it. So hopefully you like this video. Like and subscribe and smash that notification bell so that you get videos whenever I post them up, because YouTube will always try to bury them at the bottom. So definitely, like I said, support the channel, and I will see you next time. Peace.